Katharine, good morning. Let's see. Okay, let's see your video here. Good morning to you,
Good
Katharine. It's a
morning.
pleasure to have you, as always. Your
Thank
session's getting ready
you.
here. Hope you're right on your side. And the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony,
Thank
and
you.
your team for the opportunity to speak at AsBAA's Virtual Safety Week, and also to Medair for your sponsorship. When I was first invited by Anthony to speak on a human factors related topic, I just couldn't do a generic crew resource management element while the elephant is still residing over our heads. Therefore, my chosen topic for today is fatigue during the new normal, because there's nothing normal about the new normal. If I may, for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to cover a couple of objectives. And this includes the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in the industry and link that to the core of our conversation, which is the importance of fatigue awareness during this new normal. And we're going to wrap up the session with some helpful tips from aircrew in dealing with pandemic-related fatigue. And now I'm going to share my screen with you. Can we see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yep, it's all clear.
All right, wonderful. All right, so that we're all on the same page, if I may, I'd like to ask a question. What is fatigue? So one definition of fatigue is it's a feeling of constant tiredness or weakness and can be physical, mental, or a combination of both. This is taken from CASA. Essentially, fatigue is insidious. You don't know when it's going to hit you. It could hit you 12 hours into a flight, an aircrew, or maybe 3 to 4 hours into a flight, your mental capacity starts to deteriorate. And in today's world, with the current situation, we add to our day-to-day operational fatigue with pandemic fatigue. Is there such a thing as pandemic fatigue? Essentially, pandemic fatigue evolves gradually over time. Let me give you an example. Say the first year of all of us being in restriction. Yeah, okay, I think we can deal with that. But second year into it, and we still don't know when this is going to end, then we start to go through pandemic-related fatigue. And it is affected by cultural, social, and legislative environment in the country where we're in. For the aircrew in particular, it affects them directly. For those that are not working, it may affect their job security and their personal finances. For those of them that are privileged enough to work, they're subjected to constant COVID-19 tests before a flight, after a flight, while in quarantine, out of quarantine, and so on. And also they're subjected to being in quarantine or worse, in isolation should they or their passengers be tested positive. And when they are tested positive, they may be put in quarantine camps, which is not very pleasant, I hear. Of course, the new regulations can be very fatiguing as well, and it causes a lot of stress in terms that adds to your day-to-day operational stresses. All of these may affect a crew's psychological well-being, such as anxiety while on duty, perhaps depression for those that are not, or maybe when they are out port and they have access to the hotel lounges, they may get together and maybe drink just a little bit more than they normally would as they talk to each other through the situation. So why does fatigue matter, especially now? There are unknown safety risks and therefore reduced contingency options. The unknown risks, such as restrictions at layover that wasn't expected, additional COVID-related workload, and so on. And therefore, the planning of contingency options are limited. In addition to that, there may be extension of work hours, duty hours as a result of ad hoc rescue flights, also COVID-19 tests that are prolonged depending on which port they are at, which also leads to the fatigue risks of, is there adequate buffer between crew performance and their recovery? Are we allowing time for crew to get their COVID-19 tests and so on, and have some rest before they do their next duty? Of course, there are some safety considerations with all of these in place, such as the stress, uncertainty, and worry, and all these baggage that they carry with them to work. It has to, at some point, create some kind of distractions, such as perhaps discussing conditions of service or job security during operation. Or the stress, uncertainty, and worry may cause them to have sleepless nights and therefore fatigue while they're on duty. So just to add to that, first we have the day-to-day operational related fatigue, and then we have pandemic fatigue, and now the triple whammy, the quarantine fatigue that aircrew have to face when they are on duty. So what is quarantine fatigue, and is there such a thing as quarantine fatigue? Yes, according to the Massachusetts General Hospital, quarantine fatigue can be an exhaustion associated with a new restrictive lifestyle, and the signs and symptoms of quarantine fatigue are plentiful. Feeling tense, irritable, anxious. They may not be eating well or sleeping well. This lack of motivation and productivity. Thoughts may race through their minds, and they may end up suffering from interpersonal conflict as a result of the stresses that they face, or even social withdrawal. What's worse is the psychological effects of quarantine. If I may share with you a study, this is Horilock and her team studied 129 quarantine persons during the SARS epidemic in 2003, and it revealed high prevalence of psychological distress and depression. And what's really interesting to note is that the longer duration of quarantine are more associated with post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. And where we're based here in Hong Kong, the quarantine restrictions are very strict, and therefore it does raise that question of the longer duration of quarantine. Although, of course, we're trying to protect our country. At the same time, during the SARS epidemic, Bai and others studied the stress reactions amongst 338 healthcare workers who were involved in the SARS outbreak, and the mental effects on quarantine of healthcare workers include a whole list here. If I may read some of them out to you: exhaustion, detachment from others, anxiety, and so on. But if you notice here, poor concentration, indecisiveness, deteriorating work performance, and even reluctance to go to work or consideration of resignation. Let me link that to aircrew in a little bit. But The other thing here is 20% of the 338 staff members that were as part of this study felt stigmatized and rejected in their own neighborhood because of their hospital work. And I'm trying to link this to aircrew. Essentially, aircrew go to work during this time where most people are working from home and so on, but aircrew are not protected. They have to go to work. They have to endure quarantine while they're on work, all in service of their work, right? And imagine if these effects on healthcare workers, such as poor concentration, indecisiveness, deteriorating of work performance, and so on, and even reluctance to go to work, right? How does that affect safety on an air crew while they're operating a flight? And the stigmatization of simply for being a pilot or a flight attendant. They go to work in their uniform. Their neighborhood can see them in their uniform. They come back from work in their uniform. First, they worry about whether they are going to infect their family members and the risk of that. And on top of that, the entire neighborhood, right? The kids that go to school with their children and so on. So there's a huge stigma just for doing your work. At this point, instead of offering you some helpful tips that I can think of, I'd like to share with you some real life stories of air crew's direct experience. And I will share with you 2 case studies of crew enduring pandemic-related fatigue. The first case study is one of a crew that was separated from his family. In early 2020, he was in Hong Kong and he decided on a new adventure, a flying career in Japan. Mid-location, there was a travel ban in Hong Kong that was enforced, and his family got caught up in the pandemic-related red tape. The pilot ended up physically separated from his wife and small children for a period of 7 months. And of course, I think the crew that are listening to this, we know that this is not a unique story for aircrew and their family members, because quite a number of them went through similar situations. The challenges for this particular pilot was ambiguity from consulate and government bodies because things are ever changing. Of course, the emotional toll of separation from his family and constantly having to move the goalpost that was planned and dealing with the constant uncertainty. The unexpected dual household expenses now that they have to divide, as well as schooling considerations. And potential pandemic-related job insecurity still resides at the back of his mind as the pandemic prolongs. And he offers some helpful tools for dealing with separation from family during this period. For him, he relied heavily on support of extended family from both him and his wife's side, as well as network and friends. They leveraged technology to stay connected with family as top priority, and he made it a daily interaction. He stayed on the same team with his spouse while they were separated, and this ended up bonding their relationship, and the relationship became stronger. What I thought was really advanced tool was he didn't suppress or repress his emotions whenever it came up. When he felt the separation, he went through it, allowed himself to feel it, and let it pass. At the same time, he connected with and supported others who were similarly affected, and he reached out to them. So rather than concentrating on poor me, he reached out to other people around him in the same situation and offered help to them. He made it a project to set up home in the new country as a way to kind of distract from the anxiety of separation from his family, and invested time with his new co-workers because he did have time. He used the time intentionally with daily routines such as exercise, meditation. He sought higher education and took the time to acquire a new language. I suppose it might have been Japanese. The second case study is one of a crew having endured multiple quarantine. And in this case, it's a pilot who had endured over 40 days of quarantine. And sadly, I hear he still has another 14 days of quarantine to come over the Christmas holidays. And this is what he said in a statement to me. Mentally, quarantine can make you feel like the world has forgotten about you. You feel useless, aimless, and stagnant. And he also added, of course, this is more probably more the case for single crew members who are in quarantine for work, more than those, of course, of leisure travelers with kids or partners who are doing a one-off quarantine. He added that probably the biggest uplift was when someone drops off a big bag of food, drink, or other care package niceties. Further, when people come to wave through the window, it's just the little things that count and make you see the light. So his coping strategies include he focused on being enormously productive with this long uninterrupted period to study and complete his master's degree. In his case, he really leveraged this uninterrupted time and not be distracted from day-to-day life to concentrate on completing his degree. He also used the time to prioritize getting healthy by detoxing and fitness. He also, like the first pilot did, spent time not only on physical fitness, but on mental fitness as well with meditation. And also he brought with him a lot of healthy foods and vitamins. He mentioned things like vitamin B because you're not seeing a lot of sunlight, and he remembered to bring good vitamins with him. He even brought a blender to make smoothies, so there's no excuse for him not to eat healthy. He also checked in with his colleagues who flew with him and also undergoing the same quarantine period. He scheduled a video call with them every second or third day. And if I may also offer you some helpful tips for dealing with quarantine, as when I do my training courses, I do sit with crew in quarantine while they're in courses with me, and some of them have shared some helpful tips as well. One of them includes having a morning routine, such as, say, when you wake up, slowly waking up, drink some hot lemon water, maybe have a light breakfast, do a little bit of exercise, and then have a shower. And once you have a shower, do change out of your pajamas into your daily wear. This kind of triggers your mind into thinking, okay, a new day has begun. I'm ready for my day. And then at which time you might want to set some daily goals for yourself, a to-do checklist that you can check off through the day. Also, some people, if you're not doing a course or you're not studying, you could sign up for an online course. There are plenty of online courses available. Some could be up to two weeks or so, just through your period of quarantine. And by the time you're done with your quarantine, you walk away with a certificate, right? Why not? And you can even do the courses with your colleagues that are in quarantine. Other helpful tips include when when you get a knock on your door that dinner is served, it's a good way to signal that it's end of work day and now you can transition into your leisure time. Do schedule some time to move. I guess these days there are no excuses now. There's so many videos on YouTube and all of that where you can exercise within a confined space. Also, do make sure that you allocate some time for activities purely for pleasure, such as listening to music, maybe watching a Netflix movie as a reward for the end of your day, or even doing things to help you to achieve, such as clearing your mailbox, for example. Other tips include practicing mindfulness. Sure, the first couple of days you may be able to deal with it, but by day 10, day 11, day 12, it may start to get to you, right? Depression may set in, or mild anxiety may start to kick in. This might be a good time to practice mindfulness. A good mini relaxation exercise that I like to do as well is when you inhale, say, I am, and as you exhale, at peace. Inhale, I am, exhale, relax. Inhale, I am, exhale, calm. And this will really help with anxiety. I like to close with this statement. While there's still no light at the end of the tunnel, and the negative effects of crew being subjected to the triple whammy of one, operational fatigue, pandemic-related stresses, quarantine fatigue. Imagine the mental health of crew with over 100 days of quarantine and the associated unknown safety threats. I like to close on a positive note by sharing a corporate flight attendant's a video blog of what she does to stay positive during her 14 days in captivity. Here's a video I'd like to show you. It wasn't all rosy for her. She did say that on the 10th day, it was a beautiful day out for her. And she, at that time, felt very alone. And what really helped her was she was lucky enough to have a little balcony where there's an outdoor and indoor space. And she said it really helped her through her 14 days. So I'd like to end right here. And if you have any questions, there are a couple of things you could do. You could write to me directly at katie@onecrew.biz. I've got my email here on the screen, or of course, you could write to Anthony Lam at asbaa.org, and he will pass that message to me. So katie@onecrew.biz or anthony.lam@asbaa.org. And I think we have time for question and answer at this point.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Katharine. Thank you so much for such an eye-opening session on a topic that I think often is not discussed often enough. Let's now hold for questions. We do have some time. Feel free to post your questions. I think we have some already. Let's check them out.
Got a couple of comments. That's wonderful. Elias, I suppose you're an air crew saying that there's great tips. I'm sure the tips will help with your next quarantine. Well, I'm sorry you have to go through quarantine as part of your your work. I really feel for you. And that's the beautiful thing about air crew. The ones that I've spoken to, they can't wait to tell me about their resilient strategy, as hard as it is for them to go through it. A lot of crew have such positive outlook about going through this, despite the difficulties. So thank you for that message.
Katharine, we have one question here from the audience. What novel aspects of the fatigue or fatigue issues have we not seen pre-pandemic that are now emerging or has emerged over the last 2 years, you think?
I think I'm sorry. I'm taking time to reflect on this
No
because
worries. Take your time.
I feel like everything is novel because
this is the new normal. Is
this
indeed the
new
new normal.
normal is so unprecedented. I don't think we've ever gone through such a serious aspects of fatigue because I mean we're not talking about, as it is, there's already a lot of study on operational related fatigue, right? And the accidents, the direct, indirect accidents that as a result of operational fatigue. And now we add that with the extended pandemic fatigue and quarantine fatigue. It can't be good. So I don't know how else I can add to the novel aspects of it. I think it there's so much of it.
Certainly a learning process for, let's say, the entire human race.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my real worry here is, as with Hanny's presentation earlier with security, right? Will this then ultimately affect the mental health of the operator, and will that then reflect on aviation safety? Because that's what we're here about, right? What's the future going to look like?
We can give it another 2-3 minutes. We still have plenty of time, so we'll just relax and hang tight here.
And if you're taking time and you need some time to think about some questions, feel free to email us. I'll put our email addresses up again. Anthony.lam@asbaa.org or Katie@onecrew.biz. That's KATIE. And I'll add it to the chat box as well.
We have one question here from Elias. Thanks for this, Elias. Is there any survey or research done on going back to normal, quote unquote, and the effects on a sudden change? We did conduct one survey, you and I, Katie, and this was on aircrew mental health, of course. This was a couple months back. Those are some telling results, as I recall. Where aircrew often felt that they weren't getting the support they really needed. We have done a survey similar to, I think, what Alice here is asking about, but specifically on going back to normal. I don't think so. It's something we, I think, should think about in the industry. We have a comment here from Jose. Good to see you, Jose. He says, I've been quarantined at least 3 times, if not 4, because I have a huge backyard. It has not affected me much, and I do exercise. So I think Jose is probably one of the more luckier ones with access to a pretty roomy area outdoors, certainly beneficial to physical and mental health.
Yes, and whereas a lot of crew are not so lucky, they have to endure quarantine in just whatever quarantine hotels available to them. They're lucky to be able to get a quarantine hotel, let alone choose the luxury hotels that they could stay at, right?
Yeah, that's right. Or more often than not, we get air crew now that are and their families as well, and their spouses, spouses and kids that are being quarantined in remote areas that are government facilities that don't have the amenities offered by hotels. So those are among the toughest on physical and mental health. We know many pilots who have been quarantining, I think, for a third of the year easily. A third of the entire year. It's just staying in these facilities, and certainly that will have some effect. Another comment here, or question. Let's see. If there are emergent properties coming out from this pandemic, what framework available that can be used to navigate out of these new emergent properties? This is a question to unfold a little bit. Do you think that the ethnographic approach in collecting narratives and stories of experience can be a way to understand deeper on the aspects of fatigue?
At this point, as I'm sharing these stories of air crew and what they go through, really it's just from the classes that I conduct crew resource management training, and these past 2 years we're doing a lot of training via Zoom. So we do get a lot of crew that are going through quarantine, and I'm starting to see year one, for example, they're quite excited to be in class because it's one day of their quarantine gone where they can sit with other people. But now that's year two and they're still in quarantine and going through classes with me, I'm starting to see that it does affect them. And some of them are into their, 20th day of quarantine. And you can start to see that it's mentally, physically, emotionally difficult for them. And all I wanted to do is to share their stories with the community. So perhaps your question, Hafiz, would be more appropriate to a researcher. I'm mainly communicating on behalf of the crew. Anthony, this might be a question for AsBAA.
Okay, I see a question here, a comment and question. As usual, the governments and people who make and enforce these quarantine and COVID protocols have not considered the human factors issue associated. Okay, I got the chat rolling down here. Let me just scroll back up. Consider the human factors issues associated with their rules. Has there been a push or efforts from various stakeholders to make these guys understand from a human aspects point of view? This is an excellent question. And from Julio, let me say this. So precisely, I think AsBAA is tackling this very issue since COVID began. For example, this webinar that we are holding now includes government officials in the attendees. Second, AsBAA continues to advocate and lobby for the well-being of air crew that are part of our members and the industry. And so, for instance, in the last year, we've sent many correspondence, letters, and so on to the Transport and Housing Bureau, to the Port Health Authorities that's under the Department of Health in Hong Kong and around Asia, to address as scientifically as we can, as factually as we can, how certain quarantine procedures, restrictions, limitations are affecting aircrew mental health, physical health, operations, safety, and so on. So this is a continuous effort from AsBAA, and I'm sure from other similar organizations as well. So yes, we're definitely doing our best in educating these stakeholders.
There's another message here. Hi, Hans here. Unfortunately, the quarantine structure, for example, accommodation, food, internet connectivity, etc., in China is not favorable for crew. Yes, that's what we hear a lot too. I do have a lot of crew that are in quarantine in China with me in class, and unfortunately, that's the situation currently.
Julio has a question. Are they listening? Because it doesn't seem like it. That's something I think I can empathize with. I think many people empathize with that, especially if you're air crew. I would say definitely there's been progress made. We receive responses, usually timely responses. So we don't think they are, of course, holding back for any reason. So I think there's a much bigger picture at play when it comes to Hong Kong in particular. Obviously, it's pursuit for the zero COVID policy, just like in China, right? So there's a much bigger machine that is churning out this behind the scenes in Hong Kong that involves not just Hong Kong but also China. And I think this is likely one of the reasons why we feel like it's taking longer than needed to see significant changes. But I do think progress is being made. We have another comment here. Let's see. This is in a Q&A box instead of the chat box here, Katharine. So after three quarantines, actually, I'm using a lot of my connected watch. Okay, so I assume it's a smart watch, like an Apple Watch or so on, or a Fitbit, something like that, to check my burnt calories. It is a good reference to push yourself and have daily goals and keep fit when released. Absolutely. Your body will change a lot after 15 days stuck in a 10 square meter room.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that tip. We could add that to the helpful tips, Benjamin.
Okay, we have just about a minute remaining. So for anybody with any last minute questions, don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. Katie and I'd be more than happy to take a look.
While we're waiting, I'd like to send a message to all the aircrew out there that are on duty and going through quarantine and so on. Take special good care of yourselves, especially over the holidays. It can't be easy for you. I hope you have all the support that you need and care.
Okay, we have one question or comment rolled in. Let's see. Okay, not sure. Oh, I think that's it. Okay. Katie, with no further questions, many thanks again to you. Very enlightening. We'd love to see you back again soon. Please stay safe and take good care.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you, AsBAA.
Thanks so much.